All right. Hi, everybody. Today we are talking about living with and letting go of regret. And I really wanted to put that together in the name because it's really important to understand that some things you can live with, some things you can let go. And I didn't want to just be like, let's let go of regret because that is really a childish idea to think that we're going to just heal every little wound and every little dumb thing we're never going to think about. There's going to be some things that are just stuck in our brains and we're going to regret. But can we live with it? Can we accept it? So that is what I'm trying to go for today is being a little more accepting and if we can, let's go. Awesome. So I have to say I put a lot of work into this session because as I was going through it, I realized that I still had some things that I was regretting and working on. And so I just put all the tools that I have behind me is a big bookshelf with a bunch of like psychology books, and I put everything I had into this session because regret can be really debilitating, and that's something that I feel like. Thank you, Nisha. It's something that I feel like we live with it so much that we don't realize how pervasive it is. And so, just curious for you guys, like obviously you're here. How often, like, is it every day, once a week? Like, how often do you tend to think about things that you regret? Every day, hourly. Oh gosh, hourly. Yeah, daily. Yeah, used to more. Yeah, these are hard. And then there's the scale. There's some things that aren't so bad, but then there's some things that are just like, oh shit. And it just never stops. Not gonna jump ahead of myself because I put together a really good program tonight and I'm gonna stay on course. This one might be long, but I'm not 100% sure. But I really put a lot of work into this. Okay, so understanding regret. It's a feeling that shows up when we look back and wish we had chosen differently. So it could sound like I should have known better. Why did I stay so long? Why did I say that? Why didn't I take that opportunity? Why did I trust that person? Why didn't I listen to myself? And how could I have let that happen? Oh, how could I have let that happen? I have so much we're gonna do. Um, but this one that I want to talk about for just a minute is why didn't I take the opportunity? Because I really didn't dig into that, but let's just say it for a minute. How many of you guys regret things that you didn't do? So I remember maybe in college, they said, oh, you always regret the things you don't do. And so I like to think of that when I'm making decisions, especially decisions that challenge me. So so I can be a bit of a chicken. I'm also really brave, but I can be a bit of a chicken. I work from home and I find that I'm like becoming ever so slightly agoraphobic because I never leave this room. And now I'm like, the world. And so I've got to practice, right? So now here I am hosting a retreat in Costa Rica, of all things. And that's one of those things that comes up, and you're like, well, that's an opportunity. And I want to stay safe. But I know if I didn't do this, I'd regret that way more than the regret of doing it. So that was kind of one thing somebody told me, when I was younger was, you regret what you don't do. And I think living my life with that has been a good thing. I think that it can also make us be more respectful of relationships in our lives. When you say, "Oh, I don't want to leave it on bad terms," because you regret not repairing it. You regret not making up. You regret letting that fight continue. And then maybe the person died, which has happened to me. And then you're like, ah, shit, like we never got to have that conversation. The flip side of that is that if you use that motto too much, you could be putting yourself in like a cycle of pleasing in relationships because what if I never get that opportunity again? So definitely use your discretion. You don't want to just be going and going and going. But But, try to see, yeah, use your discretion and just make sure that we're not, um, I don't know, missing out on things, but also not overly committing to things. So you've got to kind of trust yourself on that. Okay, the next part is regret is not shame. I love this. I got to find the textbook I had that had this in it. It was so good. But it says, regret is not the same as shame. Let me share this with you guys. So, how many of you guys tend to feel shame? Like for what? Did I just lose you? Okay, sorry. I freaked out for a second. I thought I closed the meeting. Oh, that was a heart attack. Okay. So with shame, how many of you guys feel that like dirty feeling? Like I am bad. I'm a bad person. Like, ugh. There's a difference, right? So I wanted to put this here because regret is like I did a bad thing, and shame is I am a bad person. And I really want to separate that because for those of us who struggle with some low self esteem issues, you might do a bad thing. And like when I say bad, it could be like not cool or annoying or stupid. I'm not saying like you robbed a bank, right? Just like a bad thing, a thing you regret. But when you regret something, you might go, oh, I'm a bad person. I'm so shitty. I'm so dumb. I'm so stupid. That's the shame talking. And the shame is actually what gets us stuck in these spirals. So regret says, I wish I would have done that differently. But, then you have guilt. I did something that went against my values. So we're going to talk about that a lot because guilt is when you do something that is in alignment with who you are. Like, you know who you are. And then you do something and you're like, oh, that's dirty feeling. Grief is when it was something lost, you can't get it back. And then the responsible side is that there's something for me to own or repair, which we're going to get into this, which I'm really excited about. But shame means it's something terrible about me. So that's something that's a really important distinction is like, am I bad or did I just do a bad thing? And we can just go to town spiraling on these things. So I want to make sure we're focused on regret. Um, so some examples of regret. So I put in a bunch of random things like I regret staying in a relationship for so long. How many of you guys have regretted staying in a relationship too long? Right? Too long. And so the grief is like I lost years of my life. Shame is I was stupid for staying. Like sending you some telepathic waves right there. Anger is they treated me badly, right? And you're pissed. Anger is great. I love when people get angry in relationships. It can be super healthy. Fear is what if I do it again? And that's something that comes up a lot that I see in relationship coaching. I already made this one shitty choice. What if I do it again? Responsibility, I ignored some signs I need to understand. And growth is I now know what I didn't know then. So let's talk about the relationship side of this. The one that said, I ignored some signs, I ignored some signs. How many of you guys have been in a relationship or a situation where there are red flags coming at you, right? And you're just like, Chica's like, yep, yep. Yeah, they come at you and you're just like, I don't care. He's super hot. And that was it. And I have done some dumb shit, totally ignoring red flags. And then, of course, later we're like, oh, that was so stupid of me. And that's kind of where that shame comes in. Oh, that was stupid of me because I'm, I saw them, they were there. But I want to say a thing with the red flags that's really interesting because remember, I work as a relationship coach every single day. And red flags can be really interesting because you like a person right now in this world. It's hard to meet people that you like. You have common senses of humor. You really, I'll put it up in a second. You have common senses of humor. You, like the same kind of food. You like the same TV show and you're like, oh yeah, this is my person. So maybe you see some red flags and it's like, we want to be also loving and accepting people. We also understand that nobody's perfect. So when you see some stuff at the beginning, you might blow by it. So I have a really good blow by red flag, which used to be a regret. It's no longer. But when I was first dating my husband, he was like really, really messy, and I am very, very clean. But he was really messy. And I always chalked it up to like, oh, well, he's traveling because we always lived in separate locations. So I was like, oh, he's traveling. And this is just how he is right now. So we go on to move in together, and it turns out he's like he was disgusting. And like he had no idea of how to clean. And like that, like I couldn't quite grasp that because I'm so clean. And then I visited his parents, and his parents are divorced, and each one separately is a hoarder. So like this dude had no clue how to clean. Like both of his parents are legit like pathways through your house hoarders. And I remember early in the marriage, I regretted it because I was like, oh my God, this person that I have to live with now. But at the time, it was like, oh, he's so great. He's so cute. He's so funny. So I didn't see that. And now 15 years later, he loves to clean. He likes to clean house. He understands that. So yeah, it worked out for me. But we do see those red flags, and we want to make it work. So give yourself a little grace about that too for wanting to be a loving person. Okay, Luna, back to sharing. And then she gave you the link to the document, so you should be able to get into the document. Okay, so let's talk about the regret trap. This is so fascinating to me. The human brain is fascinating. Okay, so I want to say that the regret trap is the current version of you puts the past version of you on trial. So think about that for just a second. It's the current version of you, right? This amazing person who's learned and grown and experienced is looking at that idiot 20 years ago, and you're like, God, how are you so dumb? But you were a different person. I've had a lot of life happen to me in the last 2 weeks, and I swear to God, I am a different person today than I was 2 weeks ago. Like I am at my core, I feel like a changed person. So how can you be the exact same person you were 10, 20 years ago when you made the regret? So remember that it's the current version of you putting the past version of yourself on trial. Okay, and so you say, oh, well, how did I not know? But remember that there's that distortion, right, from the knowledge that we have. So regret often expects the past version of you to have had the skills, the courage, the clarity, the confidence, and the support that you only developed later. So now there are 12 common ways regret gets distorted. And guys, I put so much in here. I'm sorry because I'm sure it's going to be long. And you have this if you have to go get dinner or whatever, you have this, and I'll put the recording up. But I really wanted to talk about all these ways because the point is I want you to not blame yourself. That's the thing. Now, I'm going to just stop sharing for 1 second. I want you to not blame yourself. But there is, of course, some stuff that we've all done that it's like, nope, that was just super messed up, right? Maybe you did something that was like super messed up. Okay, that's one option. But the reality is there's these 12 ways that we do make regrets that don't have anything to do with who you are now. And so I really wanted to put this here because I really want to make you feel better. That's like the whole point of this is I want to help make you feel better. Okay, so let's get up in it. Okay, 2020 vision, right? Hindsight is 2020. So it's really easy for you to look back. So think about something you regret and look back, and it's like, oh, well, there was a sign, there was a sign, there was a sign. And I could have connected all those dots, you know? 2020 vision. Oh, God, no, thank you. Except for it makes us learn. But so that's something I want you to think about. It's like, this is a thing, it's a saying for a reason, so it's really like when you're looking back, you're looking from a different lived experience. All right, now we're going to go a little further. The information gap. These I'm going to go a little deeper on. This I love. I want you guys, if you could take anything away from this, I want you to remember this. You cannot use a lesson before you learn it. That is the most powerful sentence. You cannot use a lesson before you learn it. And you only learn through experience. And typically, experience can be failure, regret. So it's really, really, really awesome if you're putting yourself out there, you're having experiences, you're failing, you're picking yourself back up. That is amazing. And that's how you're going to learn. So you make decisions with the information that you had then. So I kind of want you guys to pick a regret. Should have done this at the beginning. Pick a regret. Everybody take a minute and like, what's that one regret? I'm going to do it too, because I have one that I need to have healed. So let's pick a regret and we're going to work through it and see. And maybe you'll have to pick another one for a different one, but let's try to work on one regret. So think of that one regret first, and we're going to go back to 2020 vision. Now that you look back, that regret, obviously that choice, whatever you did was wrong. But at the time, you thought it was right. So at the time, like that decision, I'm going through this with you guys. At the time, I thought that was right. Okay. The information gap. So the information gap is wonderful. There's a couple of ways to think about this. You probably didn't have all the information. Now, for some of us who are older, we were probably making a lot of decisions before there was even internet. So, like, we couldn't even Google stuff. Like, oh, how do I do this? So we were really, flying by the seat of our pants, making choices, and really trying to see, like, how to go through life. So I want to think about that for just a minute, that what information you had. And this is going to come up again later, that other people are inputting information into you. So you might be dealing with some negative information. Okay, so somebody might have lied. Somebody might have withheld information. Maybe you didn't understand the consequences yet. Or maybe you didn't know what questions to ask. I'm going to put that in the chat because I really want you guys to marinate on this part. Okay. So were you operating under the assumption that, like somebody gave you some information and somebody lied? Or maybe they didn't give you the full story. Maybe you didn't understand the consequences. Oh, that one kills me. And maybe you didn't know what questions to ask. So this can be applied to like taking a bad job that turned out to be toxic, being in a relationship, making bad choices, and at the time it's like, how many of you guys have dated somebody and they turned out to have like kind of like lied a little bit about who they are? Because when we date, right, we put our best foot forward at first. And so maybe you started dating them thinking you knew something, and then later they became somebody else. That's super interesting. Ooh, I could tell you guys a story. Okay, the capacity gap. So this is kind of what I'm dealing with today, to be honest. Sometimes you technically knew better, but you didn't have the capacity to do better. This one, I always think of diets. I don't know why. This one always comes to me because I have a client who really wants to lose weight, but he has a really, really stressful job. When he's doing okay and like he's kind of got his work schedule and he's feeling good and he's feeling like confident in the work that he's doing, his diet's on point. He eats so healthy. But once something negative happens and throws him off kilter, oh, it's Carb City. And because he doesn't have the capacity to go to the grocery store, buy the healthy foods, cook the healthy foods, he's exhausted, he's run down, and it's easier to buy a pizza. So he knows better. He knows he shouldn't eat a pizza 5 nights a week. But because work is really stressful and there's a deadline, he doesn't have the capacity to do better. So does that one kind of resonate with you guys? That it's just like, oh God, I just can't. I just can't. I know. So for me, it's I just for whatever reason, if food comes up for me with that, that's probably because it's my own thing. That when I get tired or whatever, I'm like, I just need pizza or that gin. Okay. So this has to be respected. I really believe that the capacity has to be respected because we are humans. We have finite amount of energy and positivity and emotional support. And I just feel like there has to be a little bit of self-love when it comes to the capacity gap. How does that one feel for you guys? Do you think that you could give yourself a little more, I don't know, grace around that it's like I'm doing the best I can and I really needed a beer tonight. Yeah, I just feel like the capacity one is like, I think that's one that we need to be nice to ourselves. Okay, I should have known better. So, how many of you guys like to beat up yourselves about, I should have known better? That's like such a great lie. Um, I really want you to just take the following that it's now I understand something I didn't fully understand then. And that's really all it is, right? You are a different person. So anytime you're like, oh, I shouldn't have done that, it's like, well, I wouldn't do that now, but I just want to get you out of that spiraling. So I should have known my friend was using me. Should have, should have, should have. Or I now understand that I confuse intensity with closeness. I mean, right here is some like major therapy if you wanted to know. Um, I should have known my friend was using me. I should have known whatever the bad thing is. But you could say, like, now I understand that I confuse intensity with closeness. I bet for a lot of people with relationships, so I see it all the time at the beginning of relationships. People are hot and heavy that they do ignore the red flags because they mistake intensity for connection when really it's just like hormones. And that's a wonderful time. I love hormones. But when it wears off, you're like, oh shit, that's not the person I thought. And so I want you to understand that it's like, oh, that was the confusion. That's not, I should have known better. And now I understand that I kept giving because being needed made me feel secure. So, how many of you guys kind of struggle with that? Like maybe you give a little too much, maybe you feel like you get used. But the real understanding is that I kept giving because I'm being needed, made me feel secure, right? For the people pleasers here, man, when somebody needs you, it feels good. It feels good. And so these are things to understand. And so the next time around, you're going to say, okay, I typically give too much because I feel I need to be, feeling secure. So you're going to approach it with a different perception. Okay, the fantasy redo. Oh my God. This one is just, I don't know, how many of you guys like will replay things, but with a different ending? Just like, well, if I'd done that, if I'd just gone back in. And that's just one of those things where, again, this is a cycle that needs to be broken because it's keeping you stuck. It's keeping you ruminating. It's just keeping you in there. Um, Maladaptive daydreaming. Oh my gosh, yes. Okay. So next is the burden of knowledge. This one is one that I use a lot. Um, it makes me feel good and it like low key puts the blame on somebody else just a little bit, just enough to relieve the burden. But sometimes regret comes from decisions you made based on someone else's advice. So maybe you went to a parent, a friend, a coach, a therapist, a doctor, a teacher, a mentor, whoever, and asked. Now, I'm putting myself in this mix because let me tell you, it happens from time to time that a client will come to me and they're like, "What should I do?" And, they'll want to know, and I'll give my opinion. And granted, my perception is based on me seeing 30 different relationships a week, right? So I'm taking all that in. And so sometimes I err a little more on the side of caution, um, because I don't want clients to get hurt. And in some ways, less is more. And then sometimes the client will come back and they're like, "Oh, no, that was wrong." And it worked out better, their own way. And I love when I'm wrong because that shows me that that client knows their heart, knows their gut, trusts their own knowledge. And they were like, "Lark, that's a great idea, but I'm going to go my way." So I don't mind if I'm wrong. If you're right and it feels amazing for you and you got the result you wanted, I couldn't care less if I'm wrong because it's not about me. It's about you. Um, so I want you to think about who has guided you. So I think about like a guy I hired one time and he gave me really bad advice and I've like really had to work on the regret of this decision that I made. But he was the professional and I paid him a lot of money, more than I was supposed to. It's a whole thing. So think about like maybe taking guidance that didn't quite fit with you. So I'm, kind of in a position right now where I'm looking at trying like a new business venture. And the woman that like I'm paying to help teach me, everything about her system is wrong for me. Like my gut is screaming, "Don't do it, don't do it, don't do it." So if I do it and I regret it, it's like, well, because I followed her advice. So at least in this situation, I can trust that. So I want you to think about, when you're talking to somebody that you feel has authority, maybe is more confident, more experienced, or maybe just like their advice carries weight, take a minute and think about that. Like, okay, I followed that person's advice, but they don't know everything. Okay. Um, so like right here, relationships are hard. You just need to try harder. So you stayed. And then years later, you were like, this was a super harmful relationship. So one thing to think about with this too, that I want to just pause sharing for just a minute. One thing to think about too is take into account who you're asking advice from. If you want money advice, you don't go ask your poorest friend. If you want business advice, you don't go ask the person that like doesn't, have a job or doesn't know what they're doing or like doesn't understand your specific skills. We want to make sure that we're seeking advice from the right people. So I know that with my mom, I don't ask her certain things because her opinion isn't appropriate for what I'm doing. And so that's one way too that we can mitigate some regret is by um paying attention to who it is that we're asking. Um who it is that we are getting the advice from so that we don't regret it because I do feel like that's something to pay attention to. Okay. Next is borrowed certainty. So sometimes we regret decisions because we borrowed somebody else's certainty. So it's a little bit similar, but haven't you ever met people who are so confident and like, yes, this is the way. This is the best cult of all the cults. Come join our cult. And you're like, yeah, I want to join that cult. And then later you're like, oh shit, I was in a cult, because that person was so certain. So, you know, no offense to anybody that's in a cult. I have seen lots of interesting things, but that's a good example of that. Okay, the pressure cooker choice. I think this is one that we can all super relate to when you have to make a decision under pressure. How about that? When it is like the clock is ticking. So maybe there's urgency, exhaustion, money stress, maybe a water main burst and you're like, I don't know, the first person to get here, I'll pay them however much to stop this from, flooding my house. So think about what you've done in your life that, that maybe you rushed those decisions? Oh yeah. Nisha says with salespeople, I know she's talking about the one above. Yeah. Oh God. I can get sucked in by salespeople. I'm the reason they invented infomercials for sure. Because I need everything that they tell me I need and I have to like really manage that. Okay, next is the survival strategy problem. So this is where we regret, like a lot of choices we regret were attempts to meet a real need. So this is where we're going to get a little more deeper into psychology. You wanted to feel safe, loved, chosen, included. Oh, included. That's peer pressure, you all, right? You want to feel included. So you did the drugs with the people, um, or respected or cool or whatever. And so this is where we tend to act less like who we want to be, just so that we can be, in the mix, in the group, and loved. Okay, the identity lagged. We're almost done. Remember, this is 12, and then we're going to get into the other part of it. Okay, so next is the identity lag. So we change internally before our behavior catches up. That is so funny. My friend just told me this today because I made a choice that's no longer in alignment with my belief systems. And so I believe something new, but I'd previously made a choice. So, okay, that's interesting. So an example is you knew you were becoming less of a people pleaser, but you still said yes when you wanted to say no. So you're working on being a people pleaser, but you still say yes and you said no. And part of it is because like maybe it's a habit to say yes. And you're not like quite there, even though you're still not a people pleaser as much. It's like growth isn't an instant. So think about that too. You're still growing, you're still building your new identity. Okay, next is the grief underneath regret. And there's kind of a couple ways to think about this. Um, so grief is there's regret, but there's also the grief about it, right? We lost time, chances, opportunities, relationships, maybe, your confidence, money. How many people here have lost money on some dumb shit? Um, just different things like this. And so not only are you feeling regret, but you're feeling grief about like, a thing that you lost or something that you're not able to get back. So remember too that if you're processing feelings of grief, that's another thing that you have to address. And it's not just the feelings of regret. Okay. So now going to regret as a value clue. This one I love. Regrets often point to values. So if you regret lying, honesty matters to you. If you regret staying quiet, self-expression or speaking the truth matters to you. If you regret overworking, it's like you might prefer spending time with your family. So it's really when you're doing something, look at what you regret because it's probably not in alignment with who you think you are, with who you say you are. Okay, so instead of just being like, why did I do that? Say, what does this regret tell me what I care about now? Okay, what does this regret tell me about what I care about now? These are super important. You can just do all this and it actually works. Yeah, grief has been the hardest. I agree, Catherine. I agree. Grief is my hardest part. Okay, moving on. Let's just take a minute. How is this going for you guys tonight? Are you liking this session? Am I throwing too much at you? Awesome, awesome, awesome. So we'll just take a moment. If you guys like it, tomorrow or whenever you log back into Meetup and they're like, how was your event? Give us 5 stars. And then that way it just we'll just keep moving. I want to do a regret social club. I think that could be super fun if we could do it. Might just be a bunch of people crying. I don't know. We'll see. How could we make it fun? Okay, so we're going to talk about responsibility without punishment. And this is kind of where we're going to start to get to the nuts and bolts of recovering and accepting. Because I don't know, how many of you guys want to hurt yourself? Like you did something, you regret it, and the only way that you feel okay is if you like really twist that knife, right? Like really just do it to yourself. I think that's something. I think that some people can really make it go. Mark says his inner critic can be savage. Ooh, yeah. Is that Mark Ryan? I want to know. Yeah, you need to atone exactly. And that's what I think too. I feel that way that like I feel bad about one or two things that I did that I really want to, hurt for it. Oh, hi, Mark. I was thinking about you today. I'm glad you're here. That makes me so happy. Atika wrote, some people often want to give themselves a consequence to help them remember. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Suicidal thoughts can come up for sure. I mean, that can happen a lot when you're feeling like it's too much, it's too overwhelming. It can be a lot to live with. So let's talk about responsibility without punishment. So letting go of regret does not mean, and I'm going to just kind of go slowly. Letting go of regret does not mean pretending it did not happen, right? We're not going to pretend it didn't happen. Another way of letting go of regret does not mean denying the consequences, right? We want to accept the responsibility. Letting go of regret does not mean blaming everybody else. So this for the people who have that victim mentality that are like, you made me do that. You made me say that. You made me, it's that where they're blaming. And that's just how they feel because they're hurting. And that's just the way they deal with it. Letting go of regret does not mean avoiding accountability. And it does not mean just forcing yourself to just move on, suck it up. We're not going to suck it up. Letting go of regret does not mean spiritually bypassing your way around pain. Um, I'm a coach, but I'm not a woo-woo coach. I'm like a based in science and studies coach, but I have friends who are woo-woo. And, a lot of them do try to do a lot of spirituality to get around the regret, but then they never actually address the actual problem in their hearts, you know? And I really believe that like we can dress everything up. Lots of stuff makes us feel good. I mean, things make us feel good, but it doesn't mean we dealt with it, and dealing with it is like the way to come up so it can go out. Okay, so let's talk about what letting go of regret means. Seeing the situation clearly. Oh, this is my favorite thing in the world. I am such a perspectives nerd. Side note, I have a little bird feeder and there's like 10 birds on it right now. It's very cute. Okay. So letting go of regret means seeing the situation clearly. And what I love about perception and perspective is that we can just change ours. Like we go into the world so sure, right? I am this person. This is my view. This is my identity, and I am right. But you can just kind of shift it a little bit. And it's like, oh, I wasn't exactly right about that. And you can just do that over and over and over. And as I've done this work for years, I'm a different person. I am so chill now because it's like I can see all these other variations, and I am certainly not always right. And so when you see a situation clearly, it kind of takes away some of the emotional burden that you have. Next is owning what's yours. Oh my God, there is nothing more powerful than owning your own shit. That is like, that's my favorite thing. Just say you're sorry. Say, oh yeah, I messed up. I did the thing. Owning what is yours is the fastest path to reconciliation, to understanding, to changing your perception, to healing, to letting go, owning your own shit. I love it. Understanding the context is a little bit like seeing the situation clearly, but we also want to understand like what were all the things that were in play that got me to that point. Ooh, Marco, and not owning what belongs to others. Yes. Let them be them and do their dumb shit. And I'll be me and do my dumb shit. And we can all be in peace. We don't have to be attached to each other's mistakes. Make repairs when possible. Say you're sorry, make repairs. I love this concept so much. Learning what needs to change. So that's kind of what we're doing tonight is we're learning what needs to change. We're learning about, oh, okay, this is how I would do that differently. So we've got some tools coming in a minute for learning what needs to change. And then I want you guys to practice refusing to keep punishing yourself forever. So think about that thing that we talked about that I said, oh, pick a regret. Pick a regret that we were going to work through. How many years has it been since that mistake? Think about it for a minute. Put in the chat. How many years has it been? I'm going to think about what mine is. Okay. So mine is 17 years. This one particular regret that eats me alive is 17 years old. Like, what's the statute of limitations? Because the person that I did this regret with is dead. So, like, she is not still mad at me, but it's me carrying this around. And I'm halfway through my life expectancy. So, do I want to have this just sit on my chest forever? I do not. Yeah. Yeah. A lot of people have some big ones, like 20 years or some 30s. Okay. Let's take a break. I need a minute. Ugh, I've had a day, guys. I've had a day. All right. So now we're going to get into tools and we're doing great on time. So now we're going to just get a handful of regrets in your mind, two maybe, because one tool might not work for one regret. So we'll just kind of play around. Okay. And remember, you guys have these in that document. So she'll put the document link back in, but you guys have these in the document. So, just because if we don't get to it today, like take your time, like do the work. I swear this works if you do the work. But we're just going to kind of get to know it today. So the fair trial exercise is we're going to name the regrets. Everybody in your head, name your regret. Okay. And then name the accusation. So what is it you're accusing yourself of? Okay. And then add the missing context, right? So what's the story? Like, what's the other stuff that happened around it? Hmm. I just had a really cool little because I'm doing the tool with you guys, and I just had like a cool little moment where the thing I regret was when I was in my 20s. And can we all agree that when you're in your 20s, like your brain isn't fully formed yet? And so you do, think differently for sure. Like what I value now is way different than what I valued in my 20s. Okay, now we're going to separate responsibility for shame. Okay, so now think about this. What part is mine to own? And just own it, even though it sucks to admit it, own it. And what part was influenced by someone else? And that might not be the case, but we're going to say it. What part came from fear, pressure, or lack of information? And again, this one might not apply, but what part was a pattern I had not learned how to change yet? Ooh, that one hurts me. Okay, so now give a fair verdict, not a fake positive. We don't want to be fake positive. We want to say a fair one. So, whatever it is, it's like something that you can say, I stayed longer than I wish I had, but now I understand why. Oh my God, guys, I think I'm like doing some like really good healing myself right now. This is really wild. I'm so glad I'm doing this. Okay. So now we're going to talk about the next tool. What did I know then versus what do I know now? So remember, this is a totally different tool. So if you want to pick a different regret, pick a different regret. If you want to keep working on that regret, stay with that. Okay. So this one you could do separately. We're going to do, if you wanted to write it later, you can, but it's going to be 2 columns. What I knew then, right? So this is some of that stuff of like, I knew I was unhappy. I knew the job was stressful. I knew my friend could be selfish. I knew I was scared to be alone. I knew I wanted approval. Ugh. But what I know now. So now it's like, oh, I know how stress was affecting my health. I know that how inconsistency is not the same as love. So this will be one that you can do later in a journal, but we want to have these 2 separate columns. Okay, then ask, what would have been hard for past me to understand, believe, or act on? So that's something that, again, we could do later, but do all. Okay. Now, the burden of knowledge audit. So this regrets for involving advice, influence, authority, or pressure from others. Those salespeople. So you could go down that list if this is one, right? So if you have a regret that involves advice from somebody else, go through it and kind of answer each one of these. Like, why did they, who influenced the decision? Did you go to them for help? Did they have the authority or the expertise? Did they know more than you did? Did they pressure you? Did they dismiss your concerns? Did they benefit from your choice? Did you feel free to disagree? Or were you taught to trust their voice over your own? And so when you go through that one, I want you to go, what belongs to me and what belongs to them? So this is a really good tool for those who have like that advice issue. And then what belongs to the larger context, right? So this is some deep psychology here. I was raised to obey authority. Ugh, I was taught to be nice instead of honest. I so knew when I was going to do this with you guys tonight. I just knew I was going to like have a bunch of my own stuff come up. Okay, next is the capacity gap check. So this is that one that we were talking about, that mostly I always think of diet, but that you just didn't have all the faculties, let's say, or the bandwidth, the emotional capacity. You didn't know how to handle the consequences. I like that one a lot. You didn't know how to handle the consequences. So it was easier just to make that choice rather than deal with like the opposite of it. Do you have examples of people making that kind of choice? So the capacity gaps questions that you can ask is, oh, I should have left sooner, but could I have afforded to leave? Did I have support? Did I have somewhere to go? Was I afraid of retaliation? So I really want you to do these, later when you've got something you're working on. Okay, the survival strategy reframe. So this is that one where we were just trying to survive. And when we talk about survival, I mean, like in our brain, we don't like change. We want to be safe. And so we do stuff that we might regret. So were you trying to get, avoid, or protect? What was I trying to get, avoid, protect, or feel? And this one's kind of long and I'll skip through it, so I'm not reading you all. But it really, you ask this question. I'll bold that for you. Oh, not on this one. Okay. And then it's like the possible needs, the regretted behavior, the possible need, the regretted behavior. And you're going to go through this. This is a belief change. And this is what's going to tell you, like, what is a healthier way to meet that need now? So if you could do any of them, ooh, that's a good one. Okay, and then this is going to be the last tool we'll do tonight: repair, release, or recommit. So this is a sorting tool. So does this regret need to be repaired, released, or get recommitted to? Okay, so repair is when, you know, is needed when there is something you can own or address. So repair is like apologizing, making amends, having an honest conversation, paying someone back, correcting misinformation. I mean, maybe you just owe somebody $20 and now you've been avoiding them because you were, you feel like ashamed. Just go give them the $20. Um, so that's the repair question. And then the release is, what can you release? You cannot go back and change it. The person is no longer available. The opportunity is past. You've already apologized. You've learned the lesson. And continue to replaying it is not creating anything new. So why are you still punishing yourself? And then the recommitment is needed when the regret points to a value. So you are recommitting to speaking honestly, leaving when something is not healthy, asking better questions, trusting your body, and not outsourcing your decisions. And so all these, God, I did put more. I put so much here, guys. Sorry. The values clue. So the value one is really important. So that's kind of what we talked about at the beginning, is that whatever the hurt is really does point to your value. So this regret hurts because I care about. The value underneath this regret is. And you're going to see that, like, the reason you regret is probably because you're a really good person. And that's the conflict, is that you would never act like that now. So speaking of which, now I know. So when you're saying I should have known, just change now I know. I should have known they weren't good for me. Now I know. And just everything you do. Now I know, now I know, and now I know. And the bright side of this one is that hopefully it will keep still wanting to rock and roll. And then if anybody wants to come back on, and we'll do that later. Okay, so back to regret. You got some regrets in your mind. Thinking about, trying to think about which way. I want to take it to responsibility. I think that's the best one. So when you think about the responsibility of regret, think about, what part of the regret is truly yours to own? Because remember, there's other people have knowledge, there's the capacity gap, there's survival. So if there's a puzzle that's making up your regret with all these little pieces, what part of that piece was just truly your decision or basically your mistake? What was that one last part? And now I want you to think about, is there a repair available? Are you lucky enough to be the kind of person that actually can go and repair this? Um, Nisha's asking, if someone cuts us off, is that truly our mistake or their decision? And, I think the longer that I do this work, the more I really come to think that it's their decision. I've really, really come to that. I mean, obviously, yeah, Julie says, well, how big is the mistake? And that's exactly right. Um, but I think most people tend to want to be together, have friendships or whatever. And some people can't handle conflict and just don't know what to do. So they would be the ones that cut people out. I have clients, oh my God, if you do anything to them, they cut you out of their life so fast. That is wild to me. Okay. Um, so if you are going to own this and you are going to go and be responsible for it, are you feeling prepared to go and take ownership for your part? And now let's talk about the values. When you're thinking about the regret, right? The regret is this hurt that you feel for some reason. What is the opposite of that regret? Like, what is the hurt? Because what is the value that you have? Treating people respectfully, doing what you say you're going to do, being somebody that is respectable. Okay. And then the next part is moving forward from this. What new boundary, behavior, or decision came from this, right? Because we couldn't learn the lesson without going through the experience. You went through the experience, didn't quite get the lesson you wanted, but what's the boundary, the behavior, or the decision to come from this? And then for yourself, while you're going into your lives from here on out, what are you ready to stop dragging forward? What albatross are you ready to leave behind? Okay. And then the final takeaway, the real life application that we're going to use just in the future as regrets show up. And this is all in the document. But I want you to think about when a regret shows up, instead of spiraling, oh, I'm so shitty, blah, blah, blah. I want you to think about, what exactly am I regretting? Am I feeling regret, guilt, shame, grief, or responsibility? What context am I leaving out? Is there something to repair, release, or recommit to? And what does this regret teach me about how I want to live now? If you go forth and do these things, this is like some really high level coaching that we did today. This is not a cutesy little course. I'm telling you, like, what you got today is some high level, deep psychological coaching that if you go through it and you do this, it's really, really going to help you. Um, on the document at the end of it, there's also the closing takeaway, and it's just a list of other questions that you can also go through. And a lot of these are repetitive, but it's because it takes us so long to learn something, right? So you've heard me say it a couple of times, but now you're going to go back. And it's really like, you know, what did you know now that you didn't know then? What's the context? What can you take responsibility for? What can be repaired? And these are the ways that we want to go forward in the future. Okay.